Good morning, all you history buffs out there. Yeah, both of us. Today may just be the devotional for you because today we're going to talk about a whole lot of history. Now, our word for the day is heaven. So you ask, what does heaven have to do with history? Well, if you don't know history, it's kind of hard to know where you're going if you don't know where you've been, is the concept that we're having here today. So the word for the day is heaven, and it's out of 2 Corinthians is our verse. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17, actually. I'm going to read this out of two translations for you today. The first translation I'm going to read for you is from the New King James Version, and it goes a little something like this. It says, "For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory." And you may be sitting here thinking, what in the world is that? And that right there is the reason why there are a lot of folks that just don't like the King James Version, because they will read a verse and say, what in the world was that? So let's read it out of the New Living Translation, and it says here, "Our present troubles are small and won't last very long. Yet they produce for us a glory that vastly outweighs them and will last forever." Wow. They will last forever. That eternal glory. That is a reference to heaven right there in itself. Now, a little bit of history about this. 2 Corinthians is actually Paul's second letter to the people of Corinth. Now, after his first letter, things were going pretty well for a little while, but there were a lot of false teachers that came through Corinth, and they started turning the people against Paul and Paul's teachings. So they were calling Paul all kinds of names, telling him that he was unworthy, he was not qualified, that he was too proud to be sharing the word of the Lord. And so Paul had to take a leadership stance, and he sent Titus to Corinth to kind of ease the waters and to talk to the Corinthian people. And when Titus returned to Paul, he was happy because Titus had actually changed their minds and they reverted back to the teachings of Paul. So Paul wrote his second letter to them. It's just a little bit of history about the second book of Corinthians, how Paul had to take that leadership role, had to take a step back, learn a little bit about what was going on in the past, what had just happened in the present, and then take a leadership stance and adjust to be able to guide the Corinthian people into the future. Now, when I read 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17, I think about how much faith somebody has to have to be able to believe in heaven and understand that here on this earth, this is just our preparation time for that. And I keep thinking history. I keep thinking, you know what? Thomas Jackson, also known as Stonewall Jackson, who was a very revered Confederate general, he had written a letter to his wife right before his death. And I'm going to read an excerpt of that to you, just about a little bit about his faith and how he understood and believed in heaven and how he had spent his life preparing for that moment. And he wrote this to his wife. He said, "Don't trouble yourself. These things are earthly and transitory. There are real and glorious blessings, I trust, in reserve for us beyond this life. It is best for us to keep our eyes fixed upon the throne of God. It is gratifying to be beloved and to have our conduct approved by our fellow men. But this is not worthy to be compared with the glory that is in reservation for us in the presence of the glorified Redeemer, knowing that there awaits for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory." Exceeding an eternal weight of glory. Have you heard those words before? Let me read 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17 out of the King James Version again. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. You see, Stonewall Jackson himself was quoting the Bible, that verse in the Bible, to his wife to give her hope for the future, that no matter what happened to him, that he was going to go to heaven, and that everything that we do here is just a preparation time for that. So some thoughts about that. As a heaven-bound follower of Jesus, you need to put heaven and earth in the proper perspective. Here on earth, you will live for about 100 years, give or take. You may live to be 60 or 70. Some of us only live to be 50. Some will live to be 120, 125. But you only have a finite number of years. But when you get to heaven, 1,000,000 years is just the beginning of it. You know, there's infinite, eternal numbers of years left. Yet God has determined that how you live during this short period that you're on earth is going to determine how you're going to spend your time in heaven or in hell. So this gives us a purpose in our lives for our time here on earth. It puts all of our perspectives, our troubles into perspective, and it gives us somewhat of an anticipation, at least for me it does. It gives me that anticipation for what God has planned for me for all eternity. If I prepare properly here for the afterlife, for heaven, what great and wonderful place it's going to be for all eternity. That's what I'm preparing for. So, I asked you a question today. How does your view of heaven affect your life right now? How does your view of heaven affect your life right now, today? Blessings to you. If this has touched you in any way, please feel free to share it. So hopefully it will touch somebody else. And please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button at the bottom, or give it a thumbs up if you liked it. And I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Blessings.